Okay, this is an interview of Haywood Irvis Jr. Wednesday, July 31st, 2002, Division of Military Naval Affairs, Headquarters, Latham, New York. The interviewer is Michael Russert. Could you tell me your name, date, and place of birth, please?
My name is Haywood Irvis Jr. I was born in West Coxsackie, New York, 2/7/31.
Okay, and before you entered service, what was your educational background?
I graduated from high school in Coxsackie in 1950, and I entered service in 52.
Mm-hmm. Did you work in between then?
Yes, I did.
What did you do,
I
sir?
worked at the American Valve as a molder,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to pull trays off of oven in
Okay.
American Valve.
Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I was drafted
Okay, into what branch of service?
in the Army.
Okay, could you tell us about from your entering service?
Well, I went in at Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and then I was transferred down to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, where I took my training, my infantry basic and my engineer training. And then after I left there, I came home, and then I went to Korea.
Okay, what type of training did you receive?
I went to school for electrician and pole lineman. And that's what I did because we were attached to the 5th Air Force as an outfit called SCARWAF, Special Category Army Reassigned with Air Force. And the outfit that I belonged to when I got overseas was the 366 Aviation Engineers.
And what were your assignments over there?
It was electrician and pole lineman.
Mm-hmm.
I went to school for an additional 6 weeks after I got to Korea. They shipped me back to Japan at a GEMA specialist school. And prior to that, when I was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, I went to school there also for electrician and pole lineman. So,
What were some of your duties when you reached Korea?
stringing lines, putting up lights like in the mess halls and stuff like that.
Okay,
What were like your living conditions like? Were you living in tents or like barracks?
Well,
or?
we were in barracks. We were in a barracks, and while we were in there, we built an airstrip over there, and we built a medical supply building.
mm-hmm. Where was this?
This was just below Busan. And other than that, everything was just, I played music, you know, nights off duty, off-duty hours, off post. They wanted to put me in special service, and I didn't want to go in special service because if I had, I wouldn't have got paid for it. So I did it on my own time, and I got paid for it.
Where did you do this?
Over in Korea.
I mean, in nightclubs or off base?
We did it off base, yeah. Yeah. For the officers and that, officers' lounge and stuff like that we played.
Did you play an instrument or?
Yeah, tenor sax.
Oh.
Yeah.
What about your equipment and clothing? Did you find it adequate, like with the brutal winters over there?
Yes, it did. Yeah. The clothing was nice and warm. I have no problem with the clothing.
Any contact with the North Koreans? Or?
No, I didn't have any contact with the fighting at all. We were in the zone, in the combat zone, but I didn't have any. The only thing bothered me, I never knew what climb was going to be my last. Of climbing the top of a telephone pole, you didn't know who might be watching you, you know.
Did anything happen to any of the other fellows that were in that line of work that you had heard of?
No. The only thing that I had that bothered me a bit was one of the guys, one of my best friends, he got killed in a motor pool. he volunteered that particular morning to go to work in the motor pool because they needed personnel to work in the motor pool. And he was working on a dump truck, and they had the box up in the air, and the prop broke or slid out or something. And when they finally found him, he was pinned underneath the box, you know, over the cross members. But other than that, there wasn't anything.
How about your relations with the Korean people?
I
Did
had
you
no-
have much contact at all with the South Korean
We
people?
had South Koreans that lived right on the post. I had no problems with them. Had no problems at all. In fact, they had a couple of kids that lived right there in the barracks with us. And when I came back from overseas, I tried my darndest to bring the 2 kids back with me, but I couldn't clear posts with them. But they had lost their parents in the war. So.
Well, how would you say that the conditions were in the country, the living conditions for the people there? Were you aware of them, or?
Yes, I was, pretty much. They had a way of living that was much different, you know, compared to ours. But, and it was a little weird at first, when I first got over there, but then I got accustomed to it. And they were nice people. I had no problem with them.
Did you ever get used to eating the Oriental foods? Did you eat any
No,
Oriental
I still
foods?
won't. No.
You never tried that kimchi?
No, no. I had 2 dogs while I was over there. And they got both of my dogs. And as you know, they ate them. And I've never eaten any kind of Oriental food. I don't intend to eat it.
I have 2 friends, they're twin brothers that were in Vietnam, and they said they'd never eaten any kind of Oriental food since they've
No.
been there.
When I first went overseas, now I love rice. When I first went overseas, I asked some of the guys that had been over there for a while, I said, where do we get our rice and our food from? So well, we get most of our food from the States, but we get all the rice over here. And I stopped eating rice for about 3 months until I found out later on, because they grow rice over there and they use human waste
Yeah.
to put on the rice patties.
Yeah.
And that killed it for me right there as far as rice was concerned. If they didn't have potatoes, I didn't eat anything.
What did you think of the relief of General MacArthur by Truman? Did you think anything of that when it happened, or?
Nah, not too much. The only thing that I thought about was when I was getting ready to come back to the States, they were talking about extending our stay over there. And that concerned me a little bit, but then it didn't come about. So.
Just worried about things close by?
Yeah. I wanted to get home.
How about race relations within the Army?
I had a lot of problems down in Missouri, Fort Leonard Wood, because in '52 they were just beginning to, you know, desegregate. And at that point, just about every day or every other day I was fighting. And not because it was anything that I started, but you had to fight.
How about in Korea?
Korea, I had it made better in Korea than I did in the States. I loved it in Korea and Japan, but I had a rough way to go down in Missouri.
What was it like when the war ended over there? Was everybody elated and celebrating?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was over there in '53 when it ended, and everybody was happy. And by that time, we were all ready to come home, you know. So.
And how did you come home, by troop ship, or?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. We came from Korea to Japan by plane. Then we caught a ship and came over.
Were there any parades or celebrations
No.
that you participated in? Or?
Nothing.
Nothing.
That was the war they forgot. We never, all the other states got bonuses. New York State didn't get zilch.
Same with Vietnam.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wayne is a Vietnam veteran.
Right.
You stayed in service until '54. What did you do when you came back then from Korea?
I came back from Korea. I got married to my first wife. I worked in American Valve in Coxsackie, the same place that I was working before I went in, because there wasn't any jobs, good jobs available at that time. And I put in application after application at various jobs, but I was never called, so I stayed there until 1965. And then I finally got a job working on construction in Albany out of the labor's hall. And I stayed on that for 10 years, and then when construction started going down the tubes, I saw an advertisement in the paper, in the local paper, for cement plant workers. And I took a shot at that, and I was lucky enough to land a job at the cement plant. So I stayed there for 20 years, and I retired from there in '95 after my two youngest graduated out of college.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a welder repairman down there.
Any other?
Gee, I can't think of anything.
This may not be some. When Eisenhower ran for president and on a platform of getting out of Korea, did you support him, or did you not vote at the time, or?
No, I supported him for getting me out of Korea.
Okay.
Yeah, I was glad to get out of there.
All right.
And whereabouts did you get discharged from?
I got discharged from where was it, Fort Dix. No, I think it was Kilmer.
Whereabouts was that?
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Yeah, I think it was Kilmer. Or Kilmer, New Jersey.
Okay.
And have you stayed in contact with any of the fellows you served with, or belong to any veterans?
One. He was a very close friend of mine, and he just passed away, was it March? In March.
Mm-hmm.
And he lived in Pennsylvania. He used to live in Brooklyn when we first came back from overseas. He was living in Brooklyn then. And my first wife and I, we spent our honeymoon down to his place in Brooklyn. Then he bought a new place, had it built in St. Albans. That's down Long Island.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed in contact with each other all these years. And he just passed away, just lost him in March.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you belong to any veterans organizations or the Korean War?
I did belong to the VFW down in Saugerties. I did for a while, yeah. But right now I don't.
Okay, could you tell us about this photograph that you sent?
Oh yeah, let me get that on film too. Okay, got it.
Could you tell us about when and where?
This photograph was taken in Missouri, I believe. This was shortly after I first went in down in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Mm-hmm. And at that time I was, what, 21, I think, when I had that picture taken.
Was that basically the first time you were away from home, or?
Yes, it was. It was the first time. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay. Down there to Fort Leonard Wood, it was at night. And they threw us all in a barracks together. And the very next night, we had the darndest brawl you ever laid eyes on. And all because there were 6 guys from Texas. Mm-hmm. They came and kicked the panel out of our door because there was 5 black guys in the cadre room. And he kicked the panel out of the door, and I asked him, I said, why'd you kick the panel out of the door? He said, I didn't do it. I said, well, you're the nearest one to the door. I said, if you didn't do it, who did it? He said, are you calling me a liar? I said, no, I'm not calling you a liar, but I said, who kicked it out? And then one word led to another, and we wound up in a big free-for-all. The sergeant, he came over and he saw somebody knocked him out. I don't know who did that. But we had a big mess. And that guy threw a Coke bottle at my head, and it broke hitting the wall. And if it hit me, it probably would have killed me. So I turned over a double set of bunk adapters and took that adapter. And I hit him upside his head. It's a wonder he's even living. I thought he was dead, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
But it was rough.
Okay.
Why don't you tell that story?
Yeah, one day we had Korean help work with us on the post. And one day, this old Korean Papasan grasshopper flew by, and he reached and grabbed it out of midair and threw it in the mouth while it was still kicking. And I looked at him. He said, "Toxon #1." I said, "Get out of here. Get away from me." Chomped that live grasshopper up. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it's amazing the diet
Yeah.
over there.
They used to work like mules all day long, and they'd have a little sack, and they'd have rice in it, rice and fish heads or whatever, and they'd reach in there with their fingers like that and eat a little bit of that stuff and work like mules all day long, every day.
Yeah.
But they were good people.